Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of CSF Edge Talks, and I'm your host Shavita Sharma Kukreja. Our guest today is special to Central Square Foundation and to the FLN education community worldwide, Benjamin Piper. Ben is the Director Global Education Program at Gates Foundation. Prior to this current role, Ben was Senior Director at RTI International, where he provided support to large-scale education projects across Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, and Asia. One of the most well-regarded large-scale projects that he led is Kenya's National Literacy Program to Some. Ben has a Master's in International Education Policy and doctorate degree in International Education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Thank you, Ben, for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Ben, we are seeing a lot of positive energy, momentum, and active conversations on foundational literacy and numeracy at a global level,
Yes.
including the Transforming Education Summit 2022 around the UN General Assembly. Given this context, from your perspective, how do you see and articulate the need for FLN now for all children, and also the challenges as everybody commits to taking it to action?
Yeah, I think what we have to start off with is families and the decisions that they make to really believe in the power of education. They invest their time, their resources, additional tuition support, additional app support to try and help their kids learn. And these are for families who often don't have a lot of resources. Families really believe in education and they have high expectations for their children. But the basic reality that the evidence suggests is that the lower primary grade 1 to 3 sector fundamentally underperforms with respect to learning outcomes. That across the world, a full 70% of children are not meeting government benchmarks for literacy and similar numbers for numeracy. Worldwide, 70%. And this is in comparison to rich countries where that number would be about 10%. And so I think what we have is a mismatch between what families are expecting and hoping for and what our education systems are delivering. And this is fundamentally a problem of implementation. The teachers are well-meaning. My personal view is that the problem is not that teachers are unwilling or lazy. The problem is they don't have the resources and support they need to be able to improve. I have in many contexts, Shavita, seen high quality lessons from teachers who previously were really struggling. But if they have the support and the materials and the lessons and the management above them, they can really make a fundamental improvement to learning outcomes. So if we're starting here on the ground, the rural areas with children who are improving, it's actually exciting to see that there's finally some agreement at the international level around this being a priority. So you mentioned the summit in September in New York. This was including heads of state, including the broader international community, on education more generally, but a significant amount of the time was spent on talking about the importance of foundational literacy and numeracy skills as a core part of system functioning. And I think we're in a pretty unique moment that this international collaborative has come around finally to the idea that this is a priority that we need to focus on. And it's quite exciting to see that there is buy-in, that this is a problem. There is an increased amount of evidence about what the solutions might be. The real challenge now is to see whether or not countries and partners can make the difference to improve learning outcomes in these core subjects, literacy and numeracy over time.
Ben, thank you for breaking down the whole global conversations down to the specifics of literacy, numbers, addition, subtraction. And these are, while they're basic cognitive skills, I do personally believe they're also life skills for our children, whatever they might pursue later on. Specifically in the context of all FLN conversations, we talk about the transition from needing to learn to read.
Yes.
So our children can for onward education, where they'll need the capability of reading to learn. Yeah. Could you please elaborate specifically on why we need to focus on the sub-skills to really make FLN happen in a meaningful manner?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of go back to two areas of research. One is an analysis of the levels of curriculum against the skill levels of children. This kind of research has happened all over the world, and it consistently shows that right now, I know there's some education reforms happening in India, but right now, over and over, country after country, the curriculum is expecting a level of skill that children simply don't have. And so if those children haven't gotten the ability to read and to do basic mathematics, as the curriculum progresses, I've been part of curriculum bodies. These are cycles, they go, but they're not remediation things. They're not thinking about helping kids catch up. So if they don't have the basic ability to read in the language of the textbook as they get to grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, if they don't have the ability to have mental math on the basic facts, having number sense and the core mathematical skills they need, the curriculum will leave them behind. And it currently is. And I think that gap exacerbates over time. There's something called the Matthew effect. If you get left behind early, the gap between where you are and where the curriculum expects you to be only extends. So that's one area of research that's really important, the kind of the mismatch in curriculum difficulty. The second area of research is just to think about specifically how you catch up and how the students are able to be supported to improve their learning outcomes. There's quite a bit of evidence now that didn't exist 5 years ago, not only about what will help kids learn the basic numeracy skills and the basic literacy skills, but what would work at large scale. India is fundamentally large scale, right? So it's different to be able to teach improve learning in 100 schools from 50,000 schools. State level here in India are huge numbers. But I think the evidence base is really catching up, that we do have an idea now. If we apply energy, focus, prioritization, and high quality implementation, that we can actually help these kids to be able to learn to read so that they can read to learn.
Ben, what has been your experience of models of education from sub-Saharan Africa, which have actually been able to reform and strengthen foundational literacy and numeracy at a system level? And specifically, what would be, say, top 2 or 3 key learnings which you would recommend and advise as priorities for any country seeking to do this at scale?
That's a very good question. And I think we're in a moment where we didn't have an answer for that 3 years ago, but now we do. There was a study called Learning at Scale that the Gates Foundation was proud to support. And it looked at highly effective large-scale programs. And 5 of them were in Sub-Saharan Africa. 2 of them were in India, but you didn't ask me about India. So for the ones in Sub-Saharan Africa, they had somewhat different designs. But I think a critical thing that united all of them was that there was a heavy emphasis on teaching. And there was a heavy emphasis on helping teachers teach better. So it was not inspection. It wasn't punitive. It was, these are things you need to improve on. And as you try and improve, the system will give you feedback to help that process be easier. So several of those interventions actually had similar components, structured pedagogy components, where you had the combination of a lesson plan for a teacher that helped them teach the complex task. These languages are not easy in Sub-Saharan Africa. I definitely know they're not easy here in India. And being able to understand how to do that over time within a child, within a kind of a language complex learning environment. So structured pedagogy that gives a teacher a lesson plan. They can build on it. They can expand upon it, but it's a base to help make their task easier. That lesson plan matches with the student book. So the student book has a set of activities at the letter level, the decoding level, the story level, some writing activities. Those varied across country. But all of them also had to really focus on a different kind of training. It's not the normal cascade training. We're going to tell you information about some new government initiative. It was training focused on particular skills related to the lesson routines in those books and in the lesson plan. And then fundamentally, it was incorporating this mechanism of instructional support. The designs of those differed, but instructional support was a big part of it. So to talk about 2 examples, one was a program called Equip T in Tanzania. The Tanzania program was quite interesting because one of the elements it really emphasized was local government decision-making and implementation. I'm a pedagogical person. I think about lesson plans, teaching all the time. But what this program did a good job of was make sure that the local government, 2 steps above the school, was considering what changes they need to make to their normal practice of supervision, of monitoring, so that they can help give the message to the teacher that they want them to teach differently, as well as to give them support when they struggle. So the package of support the teacher got included kind of cluster meetings around a set of schools, school-based meetings where they were improving their, sharing practice and improving their outcomes, but also coaching. That's one example from Tanzania. Another example that I want to highlight is from a program in Ghana, where the program is fundamentally around local language. So it was several different local languages and English, and the task was to help develop these materials alongside of, well, the equivalent of a state government, so that they would actually match the realities of the specifics of that language, and then be able to be structured in a way that over time, these complex languages could be learned relatively easily. And the beautiful thing about these kind of programs, Shavita, is that they allow kids to have early success. If you order the letters in these African languages by frequency rather than ABC, so you're able to maybe teach M or A or T in the first week, it actually will allow a child to be able to decode a story themselves. They've learned M, they've learned A, and within that first week, they can read themselves the word mama. So they're a grade 1-week student who can come home to their family and show their mother that they can read the word mama. And it's quite exciting to be able to have that early success. So I think the thing that's beautiful about this recent set of countries and programs is that you have the marriage between the instruction in the classroom, where the teacher is helping the student read mama, and then also the system where the overall structures down from a state level are focused fundamentally on helping the teacher teach better. That match between those two areas of work is really fundamentally important to this learning at scale set of programs in Africa, as well as India.
When we know the World Bank study pegged learning poverty for India at 55%, and that's the bad news. An additional layer of bad news became that as a country, we ended up having the longest school closure with COVID. On the positive side, after almost 4 decades, India has a national education policy which prioritizes early learning. And not only in the policy, we now actually have a countrywide FLN mission, Nipun Bharat. This is a background in which you've been able to visit India, meet with bureaucrats, visit the field, meet many other ecosystem stakeholders. In that context, what have been your reflections, or what's your sense of work that's happening in India? Where do you specifically see the structured pedagogy examples that you were quoting from your experience in sub-Saharan Africa to really support Nipun in all classrooms across the country?
No, I think so. Two points on that. Number one is that the interactions I've had with bureaucrats, as well as the ARPs in UP or CACs in MP, as well as the teachers, really gives me hope about the potential to improve learning outcomes here in India, and particularly those states where there is awareness that this is a priority, that this is something that people are themselves being held accountable to, that this is something that matters for their job. And I think that's a really important thing for change to happen. We have to understand teaching is a very unique profession. There are very few professions where you have a full day of work. You go to school, you leave school. In a lot of classrooms, that adult teacher goes into the classroom and no adult ever sees them do their job. That's very unique to education. Healthcare professionals, a lot of the other social sectors, you're doing your job, but there's some other adult interaction. It's pretty uniquely education where the job of a teacher is lonely. There's people around, but the teaching job is lonely. And so I think it's exciting to see the commitment from the Indian government, the state level, national level, to Nipun Bharat and the state level adaptations of it. Because it's all about helping the system at this level do what it can to change the system around the structures around that teacher to make the change process easier. And that includes giving them a better set of materials. It includes giving them the support they need in the process of fundamentally improving instruction. And what's beautiful, I think, theoretically at least, about structured pedagogy is it makes the life of a teacher easier. I was a teacher who was expected to teach literacy and numeracy. I did that without lesson plans, and I did it with lesson plans. And I can tell you that my experience as a teacher doing it without lesson plans, as a first-year teacher, I was 22 years old, teaching in the poorest school in the place I was living. And it's hard to do. I was well trained. My college professor was a guru in improving literacy. Guru. I go to my own classroom, my own 25 kids, the door closes. I didn't know what to do. And so the beauty of these structured pedagogy materials I've seen here in these states are that they would be the sort of materials that came to me in my second job as a teacher that helped me organize the complex task of teaching these children the basic skills. And so I think the evidence is really strong for structured pedagogy, but it's a necessary element, but it's not a sufficient element. Having those lesson plans for teachers doesn't work alone because it has to be integrated into the daily practice they are using with the workbooks and using with the training and being supported by coaching. So I think some of the stories that I've talked about earlier from other successful programs are it's the tight integration. The lesson plan is something that's daily being used. I would say that if you think about which of these states is going to be most effective most quickly, the number one metric I would look at is the percentage of teachers who use those lessons every day.
Ben, another thing noticed during COVID was how EdTech started getting leverage, way more than it was being done before. And now that schools are open, I think everyone is very keenly interested. How do we take forward the best practices of leveraging education technology into the classrooms for at-home learning in a more integrated and blended manner? From your perspective, what role do you see and hope EdTech will play in this FLN reform journey?
I think EdTech is a critical area for us to think about what the evidence has told us about EdTech, where there's been a long-range set of studies that show that EdTech alone just doesn't work. And that's both kind of the hardware. There's some previous kind of one laptop per child studies that obviously show that throwing a tablet in a classroom is never going to work. That's a no-brainer. But in addition, it's really important to think about how the EdTech solution interacts with normal instruction in a typical day. So some of the opportunities that the Indian case gives us in particular is that you have the combination of the kids are now back in school, but there were some programs and some solutions that helped the connection between home and the classroom. So I think about our portfolio of support on EdTech in a few different buckets. We have some that are looking about how do you improve personalized adaptive learning. There's been a long history of apps that would help target your skill level. And I've tried some of those myself. The programs I led had them, and they improve outcomes. And I think it's good to continue to invest in them. And I know that there's various actors in the EdTech space who are doing that. It would be great to be able to have a set of personalized adaptive learning products in various subject areas that are targeting the poor. I think that's really important, that there is kind of a lot of investment in India that's trying to target the high income markets, but it's really important to have options for the poor. So personalized adaptive learning is one bucket of work that I think I'm excited about here in India. A second one is the work that's interacting the home and the school. I really believe that the primary learning improvement is going to happen in the classroom, but there's power to think about how a teacher and an app and the home can interact to be able to supplement what's happening in the classroom. And there are quite a few exciting examples here. But you can imagine a standard part of a learning improvement package here in India be that interaction. You have a low touch ask for the teacher. It doesn't take too much extra work. That is not only connected on the content of what the child is learning, but connecting back to the parent. And again, not every parent has time. People are busy. But they do have the push they can give to their kid to be able to show, like I do with my daughter, have you done your EdTech at home work today? Show me how much you've done. I'm not going to stand over you and do it, but that child has to show me 20 minutes a day of progress. That 20 minutes a day can add up and actually connect to what's happening in the classroom so that learning can improve. But again, fundamentally, we need providers who are thinking about the low portion of that market. We don't want to have EdTech be so exciting and so good, but only helping those who, by the way, who need the help the least. So for the providers in the sector, think about that low end market. So that's one area of work that's really important. A third area of work that's really important is about the system. I think India has a dashboard for everything. The problem is not having a dashboard. That part's easy. The problem is having a dashboard that the government officer at the state level, district level, block level actually cares about. What's the data in there around foundational learning that is helping them do their job better, that is therefore connecting to them implementing the intervention better? That's one kind of area around system reform. But then also, how does a state decide whether and how to invest themselves using their own resources in ed tech, to have some standards, some way to compare, some analytic tool that would allow them to do the work. And I know the ed tech tool is a really exciting progress in that space. So that range of activities that we're supporting, and we're excited about the work of CSF and other partners here in India, is really important, because ultimately what we want to see is large scale reform that is focused on foundational learning, that has components of this attached on the side to really maximize learning improvement. I think it's high time we give up on the idea of ed tech solving the problem itself, but a combination of high quality implementation with these three buckets of work has a meaningful chance of fundamentally improving learning outcomes in ways that ed tech can solve some problems that the rest of the sector hasn't solved yet.
Thank you, Ben, once again for your time, for sharing your insights, and also very specific advice on how we can truly leverage the Nipun Bharat opportunity that the country is working towards. Thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you, and thank you all for watching. Do join us next time for another exciting edition of Edge Talks as we meet with other trailblazers from the education sector, creating solutions to ensure better quality education for all our children. Do not forget to like and subscribe our YouTube channel for more content.